Good morning, members. I always forget that. No, I always forget that. Good morning, members of the MAG Regional Council Executive Committee. The meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating in the room and via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you'd like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak located on the information desk in the hallway and give it to a MAG staff. Stop, I don't think we have anybody.
Thank you, Chair. We have not received any comments.
If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available for MAG staff. We'll now begin a meeting with the roll call of all members.
Thank you, Chair. And members of the Executive Committee, I will go down the list of members. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Mayor Gallego? Here. Thank you. Mayor Giles? Mayor Hartke?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne?
Present.
Mayor Hermosillo?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson?
Here.
And our chair is present.
Thank you. Item number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next item would be call of the audience, but since we don't have anybody who's turned in a card, nobody online, we'll go ahead and skip over that part. Item 4 is approval of consent agenda. Are there any members of the committee who wish to have an item removed for separate consideration? Seeing and hearing none, can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Osborne and a second from Mayor Hartke. All those in the room in favor say aye.
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 Online?
Aye.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I will go down the list of members joining virtually. Mayor Giles?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you, Sapna. Ed, item number 5, please.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. This is an ongoing item, which is the development of the 2-year MAG budget, also known as the Unified Planning Work Program. And we have Amy Epley here to present. She's online. I also would just note Eric Anderson is with us virtually, as is Amy St. Peter, but I will turn it to Amy Epley.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chair and members of the MAG Executive Council for letting me present today on the fiscal year 24 and 25 Biennial Unified Planning Work Program and Budget. Since January, we provided draft information and updates on the UP with the final draft being presented next month for recommended approval. This month, we are providing a revised draft of the members' dues and assessments. The current changes include allocating the 911 special assessment of the $92,416, which was added for the independent review of the region's 911 system, to all currently active members, which include those recently notified departures. However, we have recently been made aware of some of those departures will be a little longer in the transition. So we will be making an additional change to those and adding Gilbert and Paradise Valley to the fiscal year 24 allocations. This month, we are also proposing staff salary increases. MAG is recommending a proposed cost of living adjustment of 1.5% for all staff in place as of July 1st. The COLA will apply to interns, new hires, as well as staff who have recently received a promotion. Also, the salary ranges for all those positions will be extended by that 1.5% as well to ensure all staff are currently at the maximum salary will still receive that COLA. And then MAG continues to make progress on the final UP document and the budget and brief document for recommended approval next month. This concludes my presentation for information and discussion today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Amy.
Mayor, if I could just add a little bit to two pieces of that. First, the 911 assessment. So as you all know, we are currently working through a committee which is chaired by the city managers of Mesa and Glendale. It also includes the managers of Chandler, Buckeye, going through the list. I believe those are the 4 city managers who are on there. I may be missing somebody. And as well as technical folks from Phoenix, also other East and West Valley cities, to figure out what we're doing with the Maricopa Region 911 system as the state is upgrading its system. So there's been a little bit of confusion regionally, with some cities have decided to leave Maricopa Region 911 to go directly with the state. We are working closely with the Department of Administration. I've made contact with the new director, Ms. Thorson there. Her staff have been very responsive to us coming and testifying, working with the committee so that we can have some sort of regional approach to present. The goal is by July, so that cities can make better informed decisions about their future involvement in 911 or going directly with the state. And we have a consultant that our staff is working with that you all approved that's part of the assessment to figure this out. It's a big question for the region. It's a long history of 911 in the region. As a region, that's starting to come apart just a little bit. We're trying to figure out what's the value proposition of MR 911. It probably needs to evolve to something different if it is going to continue. That's what we're working on to develop a set of recommendations for you all. So that's part of this updated dues and assessments. We're figuring out with the state kind of the timing for the cities. So far, it's Gilbert, Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, and Wickenburg are the cities that have said their intention is to go directly with the state. As we've learned more about the state for that timing, we've had to adjust the assessments because some folks originally thought they would be out July 1st, and it's actually not going to happen that quickly. So we need to continue the assessments. We're going to work with each city. We're not going to charge anybody more than they need to pay, but it's a little different because some of the cities thought they weren't going to have to pay for the fiscal year, but because of the state's timing, they actually do need to pay some. It's a minimal amount, but we want to work with them. So that's piece one. If there are any questions, I can answer.
Any members from the committee on this one? Any comments?
I have a question about the 1.5 COLA. Is that on top of their annual merit increases?
Great question. So the second part on staff salary. When I came in working with Eric, there's a couple things I'm trying to look at. One is sort of the growth of our overhead expenditures and making sure that those are reasonable, largely driven by staff salaries and benefits. The second piece is the uncertainty that comes with Proposition 400. We're not knowing when and where and how it's going to be in the future is a huge funding source for MAG and gives us a little uncertainty. So this is to directly answer your question, Mayor. The 1.5% is a COLA only, and there is no built-in merit increase for MAG. So there's not a normal step process or anything. It's done on a year-by-year basis. So this proposal is 1.5% COLA for all staff. We do have some ability in the middle of the year when things change, when I'm going to be positive, things change on Prop 400 to come back with the staff and do a merit-based amount based on performance. So that we're not telling the staff it's a zero because that can be a morale buster. We wanted to give something that we knew we could absolutely support. That was a little conservative, but we've built in some flexibility if in the middle of the year, we can come back with staff and do another amount for performance-based.
Thank you for that. And Emily mentioned that 1.5 would also be added to the pay scales, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So when they do eventually get a merit increase, it will be based on that new pay scale, including that 1.5.
That's correct.
Okay.
So that our
See
senior
positivity
employees,
there.
No,
See
I saw that.
Ed?
I think we all
Did you
picked up
hear
on
it?
that. Was good.
the pay scales have to adjust as well. So
Okay.
that's what
Thank you.
that's on. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? John, Alexis, any comments?
No comments from you. Thank you.
So that was just for information and discussion. Ed, item number 6, please.
Item number 6, legislative update. We have Nathan prior here, and I also asked John Boland to come forward because, of course, legislative update is dominated by Proposition 400. But I want to cover actually some interrelated pieces that are part of what's going on at the legislature. One piece has to do with air quality, particularly ozone, which many of you in different settings have heard presentations about. And actually at Regional Council next week, we will have a significant presentation just on the facts of that, of the ozone designation for the region. Also next week, as part of that, there is an opportunity for MAG to become the lead agency for $1 million grant from the federal EPA as a planning effort for the region, which will open the door to a $4.6 billion pool of funds at the EPA for implementation of carbon reduction strategies. Primarily, I think it's going to be based around ozone and air quality, but it's a carbon reduction strategy for the region. MAG would be a lead agency working with the cities in the region that would like to. Greater Phoenix Economic Council, GPEC, I've talked with Chris Camacho. He's very committed to being part of that effort as he can. Chairman Sellers at Maricopa County is very engaged with the Maricopa DEQ. And I've actually talked a little bit to Karen Peters at State DEQ about it, because the state gets their own $3 million planning grant to do for the entire state. The MAG planning grant would be $1 million for the Maricopa region. And it's really to get towards the air quality. So how does this relate to legislative update? The issue of ozone non-attainment for us is one that has bubbled out to the legislature. And in fact, I think on Friday or Thursday, I'm looking at Audra and Nathan, was it Friday?
Friday, yes.
Yeah, Friday, the legislature formed a study committee jointly between the Senate and the House for this year to study the EPA ozone non-attainment requirements. We're hopeful that that's going to be a positive effort that we can participate in along with DEQ and really give some good fact-based information about that. But the legislature is paying attention now to the ozone, primarily, I think, because of some things going on at MAG. There is a set of steps we're going to take, which will be explained more fully next week, that involve some potential additional regulations in the region to reduce ozone that have a varying amount of cost and difficulty. And that list has been published because one of our MAG technical committees has actually been working on that and has passed that forward. That was shown to the management committee last week, but it was not for action because it's not ready yet. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. And the legislature's attention to it and the Free Enterprise Club attention to it shows that it needs a lot more work to be done to it. But we're going to have the conversation because it's becoming a legislative issue, and we want to be part of that legislative issue in a positive direction. So that's sort of part one of the legislative update, is we're to continue to engage with the legislature on air quality. I'm happy to answer, pause there and answer questions. Or
Mayor Harkey?
Thank you. Is there any kind of early tells or hints that we're hearing from them in terms of they're addressing this? I know part of ours is obviously transportation substitutions in order to make that. Are we hearing anything from them in terms of what different legislators or senators are looking at?
I'll look to Nathan, maybe even Audra. I know it's a little early and we're still trying to figure it out. And I'll ask Audra to come forward. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, of course, as Mrs. Zerker noted, release of that study committee legislature participation right now is with Griffin and Kerr, other members to be identified. As Mrs. Zerker pointed out, we want to be hopefully positive in helping and providing great information to that legislative committee. I don't know if Audra has the words on.
No, but mayor, members of executive committee, we're obviously tracking the latest developments associated with the establishment of that committee and are looking forward to learning more. It really does, its charter at least initially articulates and focus on impacts associated with the ozone non-attainment, particularly for the state, not exclusive to, but including transportation and funding.
So I think the only signal we see right now is that it will be co-chaired, or somehow the leadership will be Ms. Griffin and
Kerr.
Ms. Kerr. So those are the only two names we know, the others to be appointed. And we understand it's going to be 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats from each chamber will comprise it. And they have until the end of 2023 to issue a report. And then it also said something about a report in 2024. So it looks like it's a 1.5-year process that they're going to be going through.
So follow-up question, do they see the connection between Prop 400E and airtainment? Or are they treating this as separate with that timeline? It almost seems to be divorced from the timeline of passage of a 400E legislation.
Mayor, that's a great question. We have been raising, and by we, I'm primarily, I mean, John, Audra, have been raising the issue of the connection in every presentation that they've made. I can't really speak to how much the legislature is making that connection. I think there are some senators I know that I've been in meetings with where they have made the connection. But I'm not sure how much we're seeing that. But it is a good message for the legislature about the importance of Prop 400 extension.
I think what we've seen, especially at the last discussions before Representative Livingston, was there were members of that committee who actually asked questions about non-attainment and EPA. And even Representative Livingston talked about it a little bit. And I think what kind of got through was that a plan that's fundamentally different than what Prop 400 was approved on would have to go back to the feds for approval. And you're looking at a 2 or 3 year delay on that. So that information is getting out there. What the impact is, I think we just don't know yet. Anyone else online? Thank you.
Maybe the other thing I would just add about air quality, sort of from a legislative perspective, has to be maybe on the federal side of legislation, which would be we have had some contact with our U.S. senators' offices, because the whole issue of ozone attainment actually has a national implication. And again, you'll see it in the presentation next week, but one of the significant sources of ozone, not only in the Phoenix region, but in all of our sort of fellow region cogs in the Intermountain West. And we've been on a call with Boise, Denver, Colorado Springs, Sacramento, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, is in the West because of the way ozone is formed. We're more susceptible to it. And we're seeing significant levels of ozone that are transported across state lines and across national boundaries, some from Mexico, some even from far away as Asia. And so we're trying to work on a parallel path of regulation about a federal recognition of the difficulties of that transport of ozone. And that's something that our senators would have to help us with, and other cogs in the region are working with their US senators. So I think there's also probably a federal legislative strategy that we need to work through as we're dealing with this too. So it's not just a state issue, but we want to work at it on a federal level. And then there's the tracks of working with EPA on the whole broader definitions of when you reach attainment, as well as what we need to do, which is to be seriously addressing ozone in the region, because we are in a non-attainment status and we have to take some steps towards that. So it's sort of a 2 or 3 parallel path project legislatively and technically.
When we were in DC for National League of Cities, we had the opportunity to sit down with Representative Stanton and talk about this exact issue. And he understands it. And Greg's always been a friend of the agency, of this organization. And he said, okay, how do I help with this? We have a meeting on Friday with Senator Sinema about supply chain, but this topic is going to come up as part of that discussion. And I think, I think this is a federal issue, but like you said at different meetings, is we have to show the feds that we've done everything that we possibly can to mitigate this issue. And we just can't do any more. When we look at Intel and you look at TSMC, you look at Core, you look at LG, those are facilities that are going to bring tens of thousands of jobs to the region. And there's got to be some consideration of the unique the uniqueness of the West.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Thanks, Ed.
Sure. And then I think, back to Mayor Harkey's question, one of our significant allies in this is the business community and having a legislative strategy, because it was like my first day on the job, Chris Camacho called me about this EPA grant because he is so dialed into the issue of air quality as it relates to furthering economic growth that he wanted to put it on my radar screen from him. So I think our business partners can be good legislative advocates for us as well. And we've had good reception. Mayor Weiss took me last week to talk to leadership from a few of the West Valley chambers. Just good reception from them about the importance of the issue. And in talking to Chris at GPEC, the two questions that they get asked are, what's your air quality situation and what's your water situation, and not in any particular order. So those two things are really top of mind for people wanting to locate to Arizona, businesses wanting to locate to Arizona. And so that's got to be part of our legislative strategy.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay. Now Prop 400 extension. I thought it would be good, since we have a little bit of time, to have John Bullen, who's been doing yeoman's work in study committees and stakeholder meetings and on the floor talking about this, to just bring us all up to speed on where we stand with two bills that are sort of in parallel and in competition, but maybe merge at some, I don't know where they end up, but there's two bills that we're working with on a parallel path. So, John?
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is. Is there another slide, Tyler? Okay, perfect. So as Ed had mentioned, there's several different bills that are working their way through the process. The first bill, SB 1246, is a bill, what we call the Cook bill. So this is a bill underlying Senator Farnsworth bill. Of course, Senator Farnsworth had previously sponsored legislation in the Senate earlier this session that ultimately did not make it through committee. That legislation had a lot of conflicts with the regionally approved plan, and for a variety of reasons did not work for the region. So Representative Cook has picked up the banner and is working with a fairly broad group of stakeholders, including MAG, to try and identify solutions to move forward Prop 400E legislation. That legislation, his proposed legislation, did make it out of House Transportation Committee as well as House Rule Committee. So it currently sits and waits for a floor vote. However, Representative Cook has been consistent in his messaging both publicly and privately, acknowledging that the bill that made it out of committee needs an additional amendment. And he has been working through the stakeholder process to identify exactly what that amendment is. The legislation that made it out of committee has freeways at 52%. This is significantly larger than the regionally adopted plan, which has it at 37.4%. We are encouraged, however, that in conversations with the stakeholder group, that freeway percentage has come down and is more in alignment with the regionally approved plan, although still higher. Latest draft that was circulated has that at 42%. On the arterial side, his proposed legislation had it at 22%, which again is fairly close to where we have it in the regionally adopted plan at 22.2%. And then on the transit front, the bill that made it out of the legislature, or excuse me, out of committee, had it at 26%. Currently with stakeholder meetings, it is up to 38%. So again, things are trending in the right direction. However, we still have a ways to go. There's a number of additional provisions that we're still working through, several that would severely impact our ability to implement the plan. And of course, throughout the entire stakeholder process, our guiding North Star, if you will, is legislation that will allow us to implement the regionally adopted plan. So we continue with those conversations. The Senate is a part of those conversations. A lot of education, a lot of questions being asked, we continue to move things in the right direction. Of course, we still have a long ways to go on the Cook bill.
So just on that, in terms of the issues, clearly light rail is an issue that we just continually have to come back with. Another one that John has really been trying to work on is this whole issue of arterial programs. And if you remember in the plan, there are parts of the arterial program that were set aside. What's the name of them, John?
Regional programs. Yes.
Maybe explain that a little bit and where that rub is coming, because
Certainly.
it's about having flexibility for the future, for the unknown, versus how much certainty people are saying they want.
Yeah, and one of the core tenets of the development of our extension plan was a plan that's able to be responsive to an uncertain future. And so, of course, you all balanced the need to have certain projects defined. We need stability there, but at the same time, we need to set money back to deal with an uncertain future. One of the other core tenets of the plan too was to make our dollars go further. And so we looked really closely at fund source decisions. And, one of the decisions was made, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to federalize a $50,000 bike ped project when you can do it with local funds for significantly cheaper. And so the concept of regional programs has been tough for the legislature to understand. We've been working through those issues, trying to articulate exactly what they are. There's certainly a desire to put more guardrails, which guardrails aren't necessarily a bad thing, but they can't hamper our ability to be responsive to an uncertain future. And so we have been working through a lot of those issues, making sure that they understand that, concepts like intelligent transportation systems, which is signals synchronization, is broadly popular amongst the public, not exactly a terrifying new category of transportation investments, but something that we do as a routine part of business. So certainly it's garnered a lot of attention. We continue to work through those issues, but it's been a sticking point.
John, a couple questions related to that. And I'm sure you've already used these, but had we passed this on first drive and through and didn't have that flexibility, that was really before we had secured TSMC and all the transportation needs, or even now the most recent, what's happening in Buckeye with the battery company, or in Queen Creek. I mean, to me, that ought to be pretty obvious that we're planning for the future, but we don't exactly know what that is. And so point number one, and number two, is there, I guess I have 3 points too, in talking about the conversation about the future, I know Mayor Gallego, myself, and others have talked quite a bit about looking at innovation to be able to look at even alternative to the existing alternatives. Is there anything in there that is still intact to that? And then my third question and final, I'll stop then, is the whole conversation of a sense that when I chaired the transportation committee before and after, it's just a commitment to make sure that whatever this gets through, that every mayor is going to be able to raise a flag and run with that, and saying our community, all 20 plus are benefiting from this, rather than a sense of this is veered off of that percentage. Do you feel that is still in, or we're going in the right direction for that to still be intact?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Harkey. So in terms of your first question, you bet. TSMC, Intel are number 1 and 2 on examples that we consistently bring up. Perfect example. Back in 2004, who knew that a multi-billion, hundreds or thousands of job employer would be locating at 30317? And that's in 2004. We didn't even know that in 2019, 2018. And so that just, I think illustrates how dynamic our region is. And that I would say that those points have been very salient. A lot of the stakeholder discussions, if you will, or even legislator discussions are merely providing education and making sure that they understand the need. And I would say that we have been making a lot of progress there. In terms of your second question, emerging tech is another example of a program that we cite frequently. We don't know what that will be in the future, but we know that we have a need there. The public, very high degrees of public support. And in fact, when we have conversations with legislators, one of the topics that always comes up, no matter which legislator we're talking to, we need to be able to be responsive to these future technologies. And so that's another one of those programs that we immediately point to and say, this is the exact reason why we have that in there. And so it's largely, I think, just dispelling myths that, this is some attempt by the region to, subvert what we've done for years and years and years, and, rather reflects the region's commitment to solid transportation planning, programming, and implementation. And then I think the third question, you bet, again, our guiding principle has been, what can we do to implement the plan and to keep the plan intact? This is a plan that we worked tirelessly for 3-4 years, hundreds of thousands, thousands of comments from the public, many stakeholder meetings, and really it's a plan built by the region for the public of the region, and keeping that plan intact is critically important.
And if I could just add to that, I have the luxury, the misfortune of not having lived through the hard work that you guys lived through last year, and the ups and the downs and the disappointments and the veto and all that work came into it late. And so it's been interesting to observe. I've seen in some cases of what looks like a frustration with MAG staff from the outside, that they aren't more flexible in negotiating these things. But John's absolutely right. He is keeping the plan as the North Star. And MAG staff has actually been very flexible. I think Audra counted up 21, 22, 23 different adjustments that have been made with your informing you all since the beginning. So we've been extraordinarily flexible, but there are places where we just are not flexing anymore. And that has to go to overly prescriptive processes that will tie your hands as a governing body in making decisions going forward, overly specific definitions of things in regional programs that make them basically worthless to implement in the future, because we've learned that we need to have that in order to respond to those things. And so, we're really trying to hold the line, and it's a difficult challenge, but I think it's really important for that to happen.
I think it's also key because this body, regional council, 27 cities, along with the tribes and the counties, we are a cohesive body. We're not dysfunctional at all. You don't see, I think we're probably the most functional out of all the large metropolitan planning organizations in the nation. Audra's shaking her head yes. And I think that resonates with people who are on our side of the legislature. So I think where we run into problems, Kevin, is if we deviate too much from the plan and we go back and people say, well, that's not what we talked about. This doesn't meet our needs. The plan has proven to be successful with this body, and I think we have to be as close to it as possible. And I think, honestly, I said this when we came out of committee, 2 weeks ago? If you would have said to us in November of 2022, after the election, we're going to have 2 bills coming out of committee that we have a chance on, we would have said, nah, that's probably not going to happen. So there's still a little bit more of a wave we have to ride, but I think we'll get there. I'm optimistic on this, and we'll just keep on going. I think having continuing conversations is good.
So this is Representative Cook's bill. As John explained, it has the advantage of having come through the House Transportation Committee on a striker of the Senate Transportation Committee, which we have been told repeatedly by Senate staff is the place where the Senate president expects bills to come through, which would be Mr. Farnsworth. It also has gone through committee and rules, and it's ready to go on the House. So that's that far. And there's a second proposal that John will get to now, which is from Mr. Livingston. That's a striker on a Senator Carroll bill. And so, John, take that away.
Yeah, so the second bill, as Ed had mentioned, that we're dealing with is SB 1102. So this bill we refer to as the Livingston bill. Representative Livingston offered up a strike everything amendment in the House Appropriations Committee. The underlying bill is a bill from Senator Carroll, who last year was one of the co-sponsors of our legislation, has then then Representative Carroll. The funding allocations, again, don't quite match with the plan, but are closer than certainly the initial discussions were. Freeways are at 40%. The plan allocation is at 37.4%. Arterial/regional programs is at 21%. Plan allocation is at 22.2%. And transit is at 39%. Plan allocation is at 40.4%. Next slide. Can you go back one? Perfect. In Representative Livingston's bill that made it out of the House appropriation, there were a number of non-transportation provisions that made it into the bill. Included pocket shelters for religious organizations and nonprofits. This would have applicability beyond just our region. It would have statewide applicability. Provisions about density height or height and density zoning restrictions. Provisions about affordable housing. There were even provisions about speed limits in there. Representative Livingston did indicate that he would have stakeholder meetings again with a commitment for a further amendment. There has been since one stakeholder amendment or meeting. At that meeting, he did drop the non-transportation provisions from the bill. So that continues to be an ongoing discussion. There are still other provisions in there that we continue to work with Representative Livingston on, and continue to try and push the bill closer to what we have in the regionally adopted plan.
Obviously, one of the other big points with us, I mean, this kind of covers the overall financing. Has there been any conversation at all, or would they leave that to this body to talk about phasing sequencing? Because obviously, even if there's a little bit of a shift or a drift of within the overall finance package, there might be some ability, at least moving up, moving back projects that could accommodate that could be palatable to this body and the city's representatives. Is there any conversations at the state level at all with phasing?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Harkey, that certainly has been one of the discussion items, the sequencing of projects. I would say that that's an area where education efforts have been very successful. So to date, we've been able to educate them about what we have in the plan, how it's sequenced in the plan, for instance, the SR 30 West Corridor, making sure that they understand that the approved plan actually has funding for the initial project development and environmental work in phase one, that's really the key element of that project. And once we get that done, that corridor will be well positioned to potentially go and secure additional federal funding or really be in a position to advance. And so a lot of questions related to project phasing, but there has not been any legislative deviation from our approved plan. And that's one of those areas that we've held very firm on. So again, I think our education efforts have paid off in that space.
I think the balancing act for us, and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, is we have two plans here and similar in some ways. And I guess the balancing act for the stakeholder meetings and for MAG as an organization is you have two competing factions right now. And where does the support lie? And I think that's hard for this organization because we just don't have that idea. I don't think we're far enough along in that process to figure it out. Both sides have kind of dug in a little bit, and I think that's hard. What we've tried to do is stay as neutral as possible, stay true to our word that says we are open, we're flexible, we're willing to listen. We attend every stakeholder meeting. We're engaged, and I think that's the key to this. But I think these two plans will develop a little bit more, and we'll kind of go from there. And when we get to a point where it has to come back to the body, we'll figure that out. And you want to add to that, Ed?
No, I think you summarized it well. I would just add that there's a third part of this report, which is the governor's office. And we have been keeping lines of communication open with the governor's staff. Her staff have been attending stakeholder meetings to get informed. We've been providing them information at the same time as we have with the legislative staff. So we're trying to keep them up to speed. As you all saw, the governor did make a significant speech at the Transit Association stating her intention that the plan needed to be delivered basically as delivered by you all. Where that goes in budget negotiations, we don't know yet, but it feels like it's headed towards a resolution sooner rather than later for us. So things could move. Although we're in this 2-week lull of a spring break at the legislature, we are continuing to meet with people. We'll see, but we do feel positive about our communications with the governor. And I would say at Mr. Livingston's stakeholder meeting on Thursday or Friday, he actually had 5 members of the Democrat caucus attend that from both East and West, if I'm remembering right, and from rural areas. And there was a good engagement of the Democratic members who realized in that moment that they are going to be part of whatever majority passes Prop 400. And so we've continued to engage with the Democratic caucus at the legislature as well to answer whatever questions they have. And to your point, we've been advised by some people to go to this one and not to that one, and some not to go to that one, but not to this one. We're going to all of them. And I think it's successful because I think John Bullen has seen it out there at the Capitol area as an honest broker of information. And that's really all we can ask for, is that they believe when John presents them with data and information, they can believe it. And they do. They trust it. They may not agree with it, but they're not arguing about his facts and his data, at least. So I think that's a positive about MAG staff. And I also just have to say thank you to you all for the work of your intergovs. They're doing great work out there. And also, Mayor, you've gone to several of these hearings and have shown very well for MAG and for the unity of the region and your body. So thank you.
Our success is in being neutral. And we've made promises that we would be open, and we've made promises to Mr. Cook and Mr. Livingston. And to be duplicitous in this sinks our boat. So we stay neutral, we stay open, and we're honest brokers, and no one can ever come back, no matter how this turns out. And I want to be positive, just like Mayor Peterson is. No matter how this turns out, I don't ever want the organization to be tarnished saying, well, you said one thing and did another. That's not who we are. Mayor?
Got one more question, or at least one more question right now. So it's obvious that statewide ADOT is also being super slammed with maintenance like never before. Is there any somehow low-hanging fruit that within our regional plan to maybe pick up a little bit more? Would that appeal to more of our rural legislators if we again highlighted the fact that this is not just alleviation of some, but an offer could be an offer of greater gesture of this that would free up some of the rural highways for ADOT maintenance?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Harkey, another very good question. So I think this is an area where, again, education comes into play. So within the plan itself, we do have funding set aside for pavement rehabilitation. The region has, going back to Prop 400, picked up funding for litter landscaping sweep. We engaged ADOT early and said, what do you need to keep that whole? We were responsive. The plan responds what ADOT has told us. But moreover, if you look at the composition of projects in the plan itself, we're not just expanding, but we're rehabilitating existing freeways to make them function better. But the net result there is it actually decreases ADOT's maintenance burden. So I think poster child example of that is I-17. So reconstruct, improve, widen I-17. The net impact of that is that when we're done with that work, ADOT will have a brand new facility instead of today where they have a 50-year-old facility. That's a message that we continue to spread. I would say that our partners in rural Arizona, not necessarily at the legislative level wholly, but certainly at a county and a metropolitan planning and a local level, understand the importance of this half-cent sales tax for statewide transportation needs. They understand that if Maricopa County can't continue to take care of itself, what are already incredibly scarce revenues statewide only get more scarce. And I think the presentation that you facilitated last fall to the league, Supervisor Sellers has done another great job of telling the message at some of the rural transportation events that, without Maricopa County's half-cent sales tax, we're going to be facing a situation where, the state can either pony up the $400 million for transportation infrastructure needed to improve the area by TSMC to allow those jobs to continue to come in, or Maricopa County can take care of itself. And from a statewide proposition, I think it just makes sense to allow Maricopa County to continue to make the investments that we need to make. So that is a message that has gotten out. Our rural partners have been really good in pushing their legislative delegation, but obviously we need to continue to make sure that that pressure is kept up.
Some of the best messaging actually has come from the RTAC, which I got to look at. What does that stand? Rural Transportation something?
Rural Transportation Advisory Council.
Advisory Council. They have been some of the strongest messengers about the importance of Prop 400 because they understand that education, that without Maricopa picking up its own burden, everybody else is in trouble. And it's also led to a bit of dialogue at the legislature about, why do we have to vote on this anyway? We're not from Maricopa County. And we're like, oh, your mouth to God's ears, please give us that chance. But so anyway, that's been an interesting dialogue.
Well,
About.
one of the things that came up, I remember, I think it was a Livingston meeting, was one of the representatives said, why can't Maricopa just go out and do this directly to the supervisors? Why do they have to go through the state? That was a Republican who said that. And I thought, yes, you're getting this. So. Mayor?
Is there language drafted for the legislature to allow Maricopa County to move forward on their own?
I think that's been something that people have been thinking about since 2004. But I don't think there's any formal language drafted, but it's certainly something we can continue to think about it. And if this body would like to, we can come talk to you more about that in an advisory setting. Yeah.
Anybody else? Ed, anything else?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to take a second. I think you guys all know this, but Ed and Eric, Amy, John, Audra, Nathan, just yeoman's work at stakeholder meetings, at testifying, doing all that. I honestly don't believe we'd be nearly as successful as we are right now without that effort. So thank you, everyone.
Chairman, I would like to add that thank you for your time on this, because I don't know that when you agreed to be chairman of the regional committee, that this is what would have been on your radar at the time. And I know it has caused a lot of extra time and work for you. So very much appreciated by us.
It's so funny. My wife asked me, she said, so when you going back to work full time? And I said, when Mayor Gallego takes over. So no, it is, honestly, it has been pretty close to what I thought. I didn't think I would testify as much at the Capitol than I have. But it's been a really good, I think it shows how committed the organization is, because I don't speak for Avondale, I'm speaking for the entire organization. And I think my personality works well down at anytime you can make legislators laugh, I think that you get them on their side. So at last time, I think they laughed twice and then grimaced 3 times. Mayor Harkey's going, eh. Any requests for future agenda items? Any comments from the committee? Folks, we are